Hey Miles, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, fantastic. So let's start by just telling me, give me the elevator pitch first for Buildable, and then for your ERP.
Sure. So the elevator pitch for Buildable is that we make custom software to implement companies' visions, make their work easier, and their customers happier. Right. We fulfill that through web apps like customer portals, mobile apps, desktop apps, and all those are kind of built to last. That's really our mission. And then the elevator pitch for ERP is really around melding the benefits of open source technology with traditional commercial support for ERPs.
So tell me, what is an ERP? Because I kind of understand it, but
Sure.
I don't think most folks have ever, even if they could use one, I don't think most folks have had the privilege of interacting with one.
Yeah, ERPs, it's funny. So ERP is an acronym, obviously. It stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. So really the whole goal of an ERP is to get a uh, bird's eye level view of everything that's going on in your organization, whether you're a manufacturer, agricultural business, something like that. So that's kind of the main goal of it. It also allows you to drive pretty deep into your data points as well. So you can get a full view of what's going on. So you as a business owner or a operations manager or a finance person can make really informed decisions.
So you've told me before that most of the time ERPs are just not, they're not accessible for most manufacturers, most food producers, most of the people that we at SedCore care about. Uh, a vast majority never get to use them. And so this is kind of where you've come in. I just want you to tell me about that problem and how you got sort of asked to build a solution to it.
Sure. Yeah, ERP traditionally, I think anyone you talk to in the manufacturing industry or kind of traded sector industry in general, you can usually find someone who has an ERP story, and it's pretty often a horror story because there's a lot of things that kind of traditional ERP hasn't really accomplished. And a lot of that is the onus and focus is less on the customer and more on what benefits the manufacturer of the software itself. So like on average, an ERP installation cost can range anywhere from $75,000 all the way up to $750,000 and above. So there's a huge range of costs there. And even that low cost is really an issue. And for a smaller business, for someone who has maybe 20 employees or fewer, of which most of the manufacturers in the state of Oregon are 20 employees and fewer, that's a significant capital investment for something that maybe has a higher failure rate than something else. So
And that's just to get you to the starting line.
oh
Like
yeah,
that doesn't even talk about what costs come to maintain that kind of software or to operate it, to get training on how to dig into those data points. So you might
mhm.
have you might have bought a Ferrari and kept it in your garage.
Exactly. Yeah. Or bought a Ferrari, didn't know how to drive a manual. All those kinds of things that come into an issue, right? Where it's and maybe you didn't really need a Ferrari. You had actually needed three F-150s, but you now have a Ferrari, but you got a bunch of plywood. It can be a mess. And so that's kind of how we understood this problem. As we had a conversation with OMEP over the past couple of years, and they described the exact problem that we're talking about. It's too expensive, high failure rate. There's a lot of issues, and for the majority of the people that they're trying to help, there is not a solution that exists in the market. So that's really where we kind of came in. We're like, okay, we love solving problems. That's what we do as a company. So we're thinking about, okay, what can we do here to maybe tap into our experience with open source projects, open source technologies, to see if there actually is a solution out there that can work. And that's kind of
So,
how we're here today.
yeah, so let's take a pause there and just define that term that we're probably going to throw around 100 more times is open
Sure.
source. What does it mean, and why is it beneficial for the solution that you guys ended up, or why was it the solution? What is it, and why was it a good fit?
Yeah, so Webster's dictionary defines, we'll do that first and then kind of
Yeah.
elaborate, as open source is public code that can be altered and or distributed. So what that means is usually when you buy software, you're buying it from like QuickBooks or you're buying it from Microsoft, right? You're
Mhm.
buying it from a larger manufacturer. You don't actually have access to that code,
Mhm.
right? And it
You
costs
just
money.
better hope that it works.
Exactly. Yeah, you get it. And for, yeah, like for Windows and all those kind of things, sure, it works great, right? But for something more complicated like an ERP, that typically is harder to vet because you don't have access to the code and it's very difficult to make changes. Um, Publicly accessible code, open source code solves that problem. It's free. Typically, it's under what's called the MIT license, which
Mhm.
allows kind of free use of the software itself, and then you can alter and change the code to suit your fit. Right? That's really where the benefit comes in.
Okay, and so why was it useful in this scenario?
Sure.
How did you apply open source coding to this unique problem?
Yeah, so we looked at the issues that OMEP had described with their customers of it's rigid, it's expensive, we can't do anything with it, and it's unattainable really for a lot of our customers and to us who work with open source technologies every single day. We're like, oh, there has to be an open source solution. That's the best thing about open source is that there's a ton of different options out
Someone's
there to
already
choose
thought of
from.
this somewhere.
Exactly, and that's what we figured out. It was like, okay, let's do some serious googling essentially, and start vetting different open source projects. Let's work through them. We worked through them with OMEP. We identified a couple, and then we went ahead and got trained on them. We worked with the people who had developed the code, a couple of liaisons of people who had developed the code and actually implemented projects, and really learned a lot about what it could do and what like certain projects could really accomplish for people, and kind of went from there.
So give me like a hypothetical. I'm a widget producer. I have 25 employees. I'm making have $1.5 million, $2 million in revenue a year. What am I? How is this going to work for me?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So if you have about 20 to 25 employees, you're doing about 1.5 million. My guess is you don't have an internal IT staff to
Mhm.
manage it, which is one of the slight drawbacks of using an open source technology. You kind of have to have people who know how software works, right? Which is where we would come in and be that person and that company to help kind of walk you through it, right? But for you as a manager, you probably have a finance person, you have a manufacturing director, you have billing, shipping and receiving, inventory. You have people in your organization who own those responsibilities.
Mhm.
Really, for us, it's meeting with everybody, understanding whose roles and responsibilities are around that, working through kind of your workflows of how this is how we do things currently. And then we take a lot of stock of what do you have right now and what can we get rid of? A lot of this, the best parts about an
And that's in
ERP.
terms of software or like data points. What are you collecting, or what are you using as software?
Mhm.
What are you trying to get rid of?
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of both. A lot of it is if you're at 25 employees, you've probably experienced some good growth. You might be stagnated. There could be some issues there, but the odds-on chances that you don't already have an ERP implemented and that you're kind of jerry-rigging a bunch of different systems together
Hmm.
to try and make choices. So for us, it's about reducing your overall software footprint, right? So instead of having a system that handles your inventory but doesn't talk to accounting, and accounting doesn't talk to sales, which doesn't talk to manufacturing, which doesn't talk to shipping.
Yeah.
ERP brings all of that together. Um,
So
and
me as
so,
an owner, I can look at the whole thing, but also everybody else who's underneath me is looking all at the same data. So we're not
mhm.
trying to like decipher this all together. We can look at it, paint a clear picture, and then make decisions
Yeah,
together.
yeah, that's exactly right. And you can also set different user levels as well, so that every person in the organization can see exactly what's necessary for them to perform their job most efficiently.
Yeah, because I'm sure that there can be a sort of a data overload or drinking from a fire hose of
Hmm.
we have all this data, and we talk a lot about data-driven business and making good data-driven decisions.
Hmm.
But sometimes that more data doesn't tell a better story
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, yeah, and this has been the story for a long time of you should gather as much data as possible, but it doesn't mean anything if you can't report on it and make, good insights out of it.
Yeah.
And that's the nice thing about an ERP is that you can choose what reporting metrics you want to actually see, what's important to you as a company, depending on your business model, and go from there.
So let's just wrap it up with give me a pitch. I'm that company. Where do I go? Who do I talk to? What's the process going to be like if I'm even just interested? Do I need to commit to something? What ease some fears, because I'm sure I've had that. Like you said, most have been horror stories.
Hmm.
So we want to make sure that this is not just another ERP that's going to cost you $100,000 and
Right.
it's in your garage, your
Yeah.
software garage.
Exactly. Which I don't think anyone wants a software garage. Personally, we're a
No, that
software company.
sounds
We
like the
don't.
most boring thing in the world.
That's pretty rough. Pretty
Yeah.
rough. Yeah. So for us, it's really go to OregonERP.com. You can learn a lot about our project there. You can see a lot of the comparisons between just kind of a traditional open source, between a commercial ERP, and kind of how we're bridging that gap there of bringing the best of both worlds together. Fill out our contact form. You'll talk to me. I'll give you a call. We do a free consultation, try to understand really what you're trying to accomplish and see if we're a good fit. And then after that, we can kind of start working through the initial phases and go from there. The nice thing about our approach is that there's very little upfront cost to get started, and the monthly costs are much lower than that of a traditional ERP. You get better data security, service. You have a huge knowledge base with our team. We've been training on this thing for almost a year now. We've done some installs of it as well. We're really kind of focused on providing that service that you traditionally couldn't get and bringing that to Oregon.
So how has the partnership been with OMAP? Because they're pretty, that's going to be a trigger word for a lot of manufacturers. I know OMAP. I trust them. Can I go through them first and sort of like talk about my ERP problems, and then they would sort of connect you with them, and that partnership can sort of work together? Or
Yeah, absolutely. And I encourage pretty much everyone to contact OMEP, especially if you're in the traded sector businesses as a manufacturer. They do a great job. Jason Stratton is their ERP expert over there. He's a really talented guy. He's going to, shoot straight and give you exactly the information that you need. And, if Jason says, hey, reach out to Buildable, go to ERP.com and check them out. That's a great option. If not, he's going to shoot you in the right direction, which is really great. We love working with Jason.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you, Miles. Appreciate what you're doing. I love hearing this whole month, and probably the next year is going to be a lot about how technology and the traded sector are going to continue. Their marriage started maybe a while ago, but they're going to get stronger and stronger, and it's going to be an interesting world. Those two worlds, I think, are going to collide more and more, and it's cool to see folks like you doing the groundwork for that sort of thing. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.